Hi everyone, my name is Kirsten Kraus. I'm a research advisor for Wiz Academy and facilitator of the research capacity building workshops. Welcome to the Wiz Academy YouTube channel where we empower researchers to excel in their careers. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to kickstart topic discovery using AI tools. So stay tuned. So one of the important phases of doing topic discovery in research projects is to identify the right literature. Now that actually involves a three-phase process. Because, as a scientist, you might, through your searching, or let's say you're busy with a PhD, you might, search and you find, let's say, 300 potentially relevant papers, but then as you filter through them and as you read them, you might find that only, let's say, 80 of them are relevant, and let's say you only use 80 or 50 of them, in your final thesis. But there's a process, So, and the first phase of this process is to actually identify the right literature. Now, for that, important thing to do is, to identify the right keywords, the right databases, and then also find ways to eliminate signs that's potentially questionable. A second phase would be to organize yourself, because if you sit with between 50 and 300 papers, you need to be able to remember, where you read what, and if you've got interesting quotes from authors, you need to record this in some way. And then the third phase, of dealing with literature is to really internalize or engage. And for that, you need to actually engage what we could call a generative writing. Now, that basically means that you need to summarize your papers and you need to reflect about them. Now, generative writing basically means that, as you read, you actually have a document open on the side where you write your reflections about your reading. Now, an important principle there is you don't know what you think until you haven't written it down. Because writing really is a form of thinking. So, in this process of identifying papers, organizing yourself, and then summarizing and reflecting, you are actually then building a knowledge base, or, it could be multiple knowledge bases to feed into your different phases of writing. Now, there are basically 4 phases of writing. The first phase, as I said, is generative writing. That's really where you convert your reading and your ideas and your reflections into something that you would call, your thinking. You've written down your thinking. That's basically generating ideas, writing for yourself. The second phase is where you start crafting those ideas into an imaginary conversation. It's basically where you put all the views of your papers, the authors from your papers, together with your reflections and your synthesis of that. The third phase is where you start preparing your document for the community. It could be for, a paper that you're writing, a journal that you're writing, or it could be for your examiners. And then the fourth phase is about scientific peer review. That's the phase basically where people from the community that you're writing for, it could be the journal, it could be your examiners, are starting to give you feedback. It could also be your supervisor. Now, in this process, identifying literature, organizing yourself, summarizing and reflecting, or generating ideas as you read, actually is an important phase, a very important phase of topic discovery. Now, there's 4 very important scientific claims that can actually guide this process. The first one is the question proposed by the researcher is relevant and persisting in the field of study. Now, that question basically speaks to keywords related to research problems in your field of interest, and specifically doing a review of literature on research problems related to your study. Now that is very important, because as you write your introduction or as you write a proposal, you need to be able to present all the different positions of the authors that you are reading, specifically related to research problems. So you need to say there are different types of research problems, but then at the end of that discussion or that imagined conversation between yourself and the literature that you've read, you need to identify a research problem that's really specific or relevant and persisting in your field of study. Now, when I say relevant and persisting, it means that this is really a topic or a problem that is there, it's been confirmed by literature, but if it's persistent, it also means it's been a problem for a while, for example. It's been confirmed by many sources of literature, and it's really then something that you need to investigate. It's really a knowledge gap that you can focus on in your study. The second claim speaks to the theoretical framework, and it says that the theoretical framework or perspective is appropriate for investigating the question that the researcher is investigating. Now, this basically means that if you use a theoretical framework, you need to do reviews of literature and apply keywords related to theory or theory in your field of study or theory related. But the keyword there specifically is appropriate, so when you combine, for example, the first set of keywords and the second set of keywords, which is problem-related keywords or topic-related keywords and theory-related keywords, that combination of keywords can then assist you to identify possible theories that other people have used to study a topic similar to yours or to address a problem similar to what you are addressing. The third claim says that the research method and approach are appropriate for investigating the research question given the theoretical framework or perspective of the research. This basically means that you're going to do a fourth review of literature. And, if you use a very specific methodology, let's say case study research, you're going to identify keywords related to case study research in general, but then you're going to have to use keywords for searching these databases that speak to how case study research was used for your topic of interest and how it was used, let's say the specific theoretical framework that you are interested in. Again, the important principle here is appropriate, because you want to identify methodologies that are appropriate for your problem and your topic. The fourth scientific claim is the empirical situation is appropriate for observing the phenomena that the researcher is investigating. This basically says that you're going to have to do searches on contextual issues. So, for example, if you want to combine those four types of keywords or the four types of literature searches and then the four types of reviews of literature that you're going to do, you can then, if we use this example, combine keywords related to, let's say, ICTs in education, add theoretical frameworks saying, let's say, I'm going to use the technology acceptance model. If you want to use case study research, you add that keyword, and then the fourth keyword would then be, let's say, rural South Africa. And so when using the combination of keywords, you can then identify relevant literature. And the important thing here is, in all four of these reviews of literature that you're doing, you need to kind of move from a general to a specific point of view. So, let's say you look at the technology acceptance model, you're going to study the technology acceptance model in general, but then you're going to apply it and combine it with the other keywords like problem-related keywords, methodology-related keywords, and then context-related keywords. Now, at the end of the day, as you do your literature searches, as you identify, organize, and reflect and summarize, you want to come up with two knowledge bases. Now this can be a Word document. You can create a Word document. It could be something that you do in a Excel spreadsheet. You could use Mendeley to organize yourself. But basically what I'm showing here now is two types of knowledge bases. The first one basically summarizes your literature. Now you'll note that the columns kind of align with the keywords. Okay, now this is really flexible. What I don't have there is a column related to theory. But it could be that you say, well, I need to put a column in related to theory. And the whole idea is, as you read your literature, let's say the 50 papers, you summarize you summarize the literature in those columns. So the first column would be problem-related issues for all your literature, and you then will have like 30 or 50 rows. You will have a column for approach. You will have a column for the keywords. Those keywords would then feed into further searches if you find that you don't have enough literature. And then let's say in this case, key contributions, or if you have a theory column, you summarize the essence of theory from each of those papers. The second knowledge base, basically, it's a different type of organization, but in that knowledge base, what you want to do is actually record your reflections as you read. Now, in this case, you put the citation, or you could put the citation, you could put interesting quotes that you believe might be useful to really support your argument later in your writing, in your drafting phase. And then, add your reflections. And the reflections column is really an important column because that's your thinking about your reading of an article. Now, at the end of the day, these two knowledge bases will feed into your different phases of writing. So, for example, if you're busy creating ideas, generating ideas through generative writing, the reflections basically align with it. But then if you start with the drafting phase, and that's where you have this imaginary conversation between yourself as the researcher and the different authors of your papers, that's where you start putting all these ideas together as an argument, or an imaginary conversation. So, using these two knowledge bases is really a useful way of coping, with the sheer amount of literature that you might have to deal with, And as I said, in the beginning of your research, you might, identify, let's say, 300 potential papers, book chapters, or conference papers. As you filter through those, you might realize that, between 30 or 50 of those are relevant. And those are the ones that you would then take further to your knowledge base too, where you start writing your reflections. And then if you have your knowledge base too, which is like a list of, 30 or 50 rows, that then becomes the starting point for you to start your writing, generating ideas or drafting your arguments. Now, there are different tools, AI tools, emerging to assist you with this. And then there's also traditional approaches that we use during topic discovery. It's really important to know that, when you explore different AI tools, that it's always important to know that these are tools. It can never replace your thinking. A very important thing about, generative writing, especially, or during the topic discovery phase, is that you can never outsource your thinking. Thinking and reflection should really stay with you as a researcher. I personally found that, these AI tools can really maybe help you to identify literature and maybe to some degree organize it. But when it comes to generating ideas or really generating reflections, it's really the responsibility of you as a researcher. And the reason why I'm saying that is, later in your research where you need to, let's say, engage with the data, or let's say you need to do an interview, and you encounter a situation where a person responds with something that you didn't expect, you need to be able to respond with follow-up questions and follow-up reflections on that conversation. And if you didn't do your thinking early in your topic discovery and you kind of outsource that to an AI tool, you might really be lost. Now, in this diagram, in this picture, I show, in the big arrow, the traditional tools that we use. You do things like literature searches, you use discovery tools on the library databases. There might be different search strategies. There might be different ways of organizing your literature. And you might do a preliminary review of literature. Now, traditionally, and I would say before AI, the essence of the traditional approach is, like, for example, a systematic lit review is the real principle of systematic rigor. It's basically where you go through your literature and you tag everything, and you make sure that everything that you read is summarized and sort of tagged. If let's say you use Atlas TI. So the strength of the traditional approach is really systematic rigor. The strength of AI is really to identify those linkages and, maybe to do the heavy lifting in terms of summarizing. Now, I've grouped the tools. Now, these are not the only tools, but I've basically grouped the tools. At the top, there's tools like Cite, Litmap, Semantic Scholar, Connected Papers, and Research Rabbit that can really help you, make connections between papers, good papers that you identify, and related works. Now, using those sorts of tools can be really useful to assist with forwards and backwards referencing. Now, when I say forwards and backwards referencing, I mean that, let's say you identify a very interesting paper, and it often happens, in the topic discovery phase that you identify a really useful or interesting paper. And then what you then do is you look backwards as to who this paper cited. So that's backwards referencing. Forward referencing would be to look at who cited this paper, the seminal paper that you are looking at. Now, these tools that I just mentioned at the top can be really useful to make those linkages, and all of them kind of have the same idea of building a network of related papers. So that's a tool, after you've done your rigorous phase, the traditional approach, you use the AI tools to find these connections. And then by doing that, you find more papers, more relevant papers. And then obviously you need to go through a process of checking, reflection, and generating ideas on those papers. The examples of tools at the bottom: Elicit, Perplexity, Chat PDF, Casper AI, and Lateral. And there's more as well, there's many more. Those tools can be useful to summarize literature. Elicit, for example, what it can do for you is you can upload, let's say, 5 or 10 PDFs, and you can ask it to summarize those PDFs in different columns. The problem that I've identified with all those tools is that, it's not really good with summarizing. So it can do the heavy lifting for you, but you as an author still need to go and read the paper to make sure that when these tools do the summarizing for you, that it's in fact correct and it's correctly identified. So those tools are kind of useful to do the heavy lifting, to do the basics for you, the first phase of summarizing or connecting. But then you as an author need to really delve in deep and make sure, download that table and, work with it in an Excel spreadsheet, and make sure that the summaries presented by AI and the prompting that you do in those tools, that those summaries are in fact correct. Now, this diagram basically shows how all these, principles that I explained, up to now fit together. So you have the traditional approaches and you have the AI tools that can assist you with topic discovery in the early phases, but that feeds into the identification, the organization, and the summarizing and reflecting phases of your research. And summarizing and reflection is really where you as a researcher need to generate ideas. You can't outsource that, as I explained earlier. Now, you might have, different partners, collaborators in your topic discovery phase. Now, it's really useful in that phase to, go and speak to your subject librarian, because a subject librarian can really also help you with the early phases of identifying literature. But then based on the keywords that you give to that subject librarian. And so to identify the real keywords is really an iterative process, because, as you build your knowledge base, you identify keywords and you identify more keywords, and those keywords need to feed back into your collaborators, like, for example, your subject librarian. So based on that, I would say if you follow these principles, the traditional tools for identifying literature, organizing yourself, using AI tools, and obviously you need to go and experiment with those and see which of those are useful. Some of them are paid for, some are free, like Elicit I know is free, Semantic Scholar is free, but Connected Papers is something that you would pay for. But experiment with that and see which one which ones are really useful for you. And then, that, as I said, feeds into the identify, organizing, reflection. And if you have your two knowledge bases, or whatever sort of knowledge base you have, resulting from your review, your reading and reflection around literature, that can then prepare you to do the generative writing and to do the drafting, and then obviously edit and submit your thesis, submit your paper for peer review by the community. So that, in a nutshell, I would say is something I would say is useful for topic discovery. But I invite you to go to the Wiz Academy website, because at the Wiz Academy website, on the Wiz Academy website, we have many more courses, much longer versions of this. There's actually a full course on research, topic discovery, and artificial intelligence, and then also various courses on argumentation, on artificial intelligence, and academic writing. So happy topic discovery.